η τρίτη ομιλία, η δεύτερη ποια.
So, hello. We are here with CrimCon stream 1 here on our first day. We have with us here aspects of crime and deviance in Greece under Crises. This is one of our international panels. We're very excited to see this work. A few ground rules here about how this will work. We'll be proceeding in the order of the program. Each presenter will have 10 minutes, and we will keep time pretty strictly. When you have questions, type them in the Q&A box. There's a button down at the bottom of your window that says Q&A. Hit that and type your question in the box. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. We may not have time to answer all of your questions. Don't panic if you don't see the question for attendees. It's just the ones that we answer that you'll be able to see. So with that, I would like to get started with our first presenter on this panel. Please go ahead. That should be, is it Maria?
It's Maria Kranidioti and Dionysios Chionis.
Yes.
Is it this?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, okay. So, I must make the, now I think it's this one, yes. Now, this is, we are going to talk about museums and prevention of crimes against antiquities. And just a moment, because I must take the photos. I have a problem, okay. We are going to discuss about this subject. This is a photo. This is a photo of Parthenon in 1938. And the key word of our presentation is ikiosis. Ikiosis in Greek, ikiosis. The photo was taken in 1938 and shows the pupils of the 4th class of the gymnasium of a public state school in Piraeus. This is the harbor near Athens. Their teachers have got them in Acropolis in order to show them the monument that is Parthenon, so that they get into a process of ikiosis with it and with the ancient Greek civilization. Now, the word ikiosis goes back in antique times and is found in Greek and Roman philosophical texts. In Greek, it has the opposite meaning of allotriosis, that is alienation or estrangement. And Jacob Klein says that the English words of appropriation and orientation come close to the meaning of ikiosis, but fail to capture the recognition of personal affinity conveyed by the Greek. The working definition, which underlies our study, is going to be presented in the end after the findings. Now, the initial publication of research findings was published in a honorary volume of the professor of Panteion University, Antonis Maganas. Then the findings were presented in the second scientific conference of the Hellenic Society of Criminology in 2019. And there is a second publication of the study in electronic form by the presenters today. Now, our research is based on a work on protection of museums and archaeological sites from offenses and criminal acts. And this belongs to the program Kapodistrian and was financed by the Special Account for Research of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. The data selection was done first, and the second phase was in 1999 and 2006, and this included also archaeological sites, while the third phase, we had the design for the third phase, we had designed a random sample on museums, and this is what we're going to present today. Now, our basic working definitions were that guards of museums and archaeological sites were all persons appointed to carry out the respective tasks, and the use and function of technical means were preventive. That is the function that aims at the discouragement of the commission of illegal acts, and also repressive, which means that it involves enforcement and coercion and aims at detecting the illegal acts and identifying the offender. Our universe were 143 museums all over Greece. This was from a sample frame. It was the list of museums from the official website of the Ministry of Culture. And our final sample consisted of 27 museums at about 19% of the total population or universe. Now the research was carried out by face-to-face interviews with guardianship personnel of any museum, of the museums, and there were it included 18 main and questions and 68 sub-questions, closed and open questions, and the respondents were asked about their personal characteristics, attacks and illegal acts against cultural goods observed by them that have taken place in the museum's means of protection, and their attitudes and estimations about the extent and nature of illicit trafficking and of cultural goods, and also the protection and guardianship of museums and archaeological sites all over the country. Now, please, I have finished.
Okay, my name is Dionysios Chionis, and I will present you the main findings of our research in summary. As you can see, the illegal acts reported by the guards were mainly theft and burglary, without any item being dispossessed in this case, as well as damage of items and illegal excavation in 2 cases. The respondents' opinion about the vulnerability of the display items was that the small and valuable items are the most vulnerable. Following in risk are the items exposed outdoors, and next, the golden items. 15% of the guards answered that all the items are in danger, and another 15% answered that no item is in danger, the exact opposite. In regards with the technical means, 44% of the respondents, almost half of them, reported that the museums they work for have been using a combination of technical equipment consisted of alarm, fire safety, and CCTV, security cameras. 30% of them answered that alarm and fire safety were available in their museum, and 22% responded that they were equipped with alarm and security cameras. Concerning the efficiency of the preventive technical means, it was evaluated as efficient by the 44% of the interviewees and as very efficient by the 33%, while only the 4% evaluated them as positive. Now, during the economic crisis in Greece and abroad, of course, the guardianship personnel of the museums and the archaeological sites were reduced. according to the most of the interviewees, 59%. 26% answered that the personnel was not reduced, and only 11% had the opinion that it was actually increased. We asked the guards whether the protection of the museums is adequate or inadequate, and more than the half of them selected the first answer, while 22% did not answer, as you can see in this table. Compared to the first phase of our research conducted in 1999 and 2006, the illegal acts in the museums were significantly decreased in 2013, 26 to 10, as you can see, while the preventive technical means were more and of higher technology, and in most cases there was a combination of several of them, of several technical means. Our main findings, in conclusion, it must be underlined that we noticed reducement of the illegal acts of the crimes committed in the museums, and in the same time, significant increase of the preventive technical means, as well as of their efficiency due to their higher technology level, although there are displayed vulnerable items in the museums and the archaeological sites. We can reasonably assume that there is a strong correlation between the above two main findings at the very time when there is downsizing in the guardianship personnel that occurred during the economic crisis. However, there is no doubt that the best prevention method acquires a combination of high technology technical means as well as a well-trained guardianship personnel which cooperates with the authorities, the state authorities. So, Dr. Kranidioti, would you like to present our epilogue?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. This is now the morale of our research. I will come back to our working definition, which underlies our study and refers to the passive meaning of the word ikiosis, which is connected to the feeling that a person has of something which belongs to him or her in the sense that he or she coexists or co-inhabits with it, and at the same moment, this something, which is the monument, transcends him, and he or she wants to protect it so that it will continue to exist after him. And as a conclusion, we would say that we, as citizens of Greece and of the whole world, ought to be aware of the fact that the monuments and the other cultural goods do not belong to us in the sense of ownership or possession. Nevertheless, they do belong to us in the sense of ikiosis, hence we ought to protect them and to feel co-responsible when they are damaged. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will move now to our next presentation.
I think that Professor Mayra Kranidioti, you should
yes, this is
down your.
How can I do this? Stop
by
sharing.
Minimizing the PPT
yes, I do
presentation.
Immediately, but I try to find the button.
Yeah, there's a button at the very top there that's red that says stop screen
top,
share.
Yes.
There it
is this? Yes.
Is it okay? Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Excuse me.
It's okay. Thank you.
And that should let you share the screen now.
You don't see my screen now?
No.
No.
Not yet.
Okay. Just a moment. Sorry. Now?
Yes, we got it now.
Now
Thank
it's
you.
okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Anastasia Chalkia, and I'm going to present the research we have conducted on Syrian population with the Dr. Joanna Tsiganou and Martha Lempesi. So our paper is aiming. Sorry, just a moment to open my camera. I'll find it. Okay. Our paper. I don't know what is happening now. Just a moment, because my camera is closed, and I'm sorry for that. But I don't know how to open it now. Sorry, I cannot find.
Anastasia, it's not necessary to have your camera on because we are all sharing your screen.
Okay, but it will be better for me. Start video. Okay. Well, sorry. And our research aiming at exhibiting the various meanings attributed to the notion of criminal law and criminal justice by migrant social actors living in two different social environments, the environment of their country of origin and the environment of their host country. The data provided are based on qualitative research conducted through in-depth interviews during the second semester of 2019 on the Syrian refugee population living in Athens, as I said before. Our case study on traveling populations from Syria demands not only attention to overarching global structures and phenomenon, but mainly faith in single sites within an attention to motion. Such sites, with sometimes requiring methodological innovation, are nevertheless still accessible through traditional criminological approaches and knowledge which is grounded and embedded. Crime ethnography in this research has offered a wealth of insights into our work. Syrian perceptions on of the legal system and the important legal institutions are of great importance, of course, in that they guide behaviors. To this respect, they also facilitate or burden social integration to the new and host social culture environments. Going now to the narrative frame of the pre-war rule of law in the country of origin, we can say that respondents were clear enough on what is permitted and what was forbidden during the pre-war period in Syria. Nobody is to question that the rule of law in Syria was applied regulating lawful and unlawful behavior. After all, Syria has entered the modernization era and has left behind traditional nomadic practices, of course. Going now to the next slide, which has to do on the narrative frame about political regime in Syria. We can say that among others, we can detect in quotation like this on the slide, an attempt made often in the international history of nations by westernized reformers to place countries and societies on the road to modern government and the clash between the conditions of modernity and tradition with the modernization perspective. However, even before the war, the political regime in Syria was not allowed to be questioned, and therefore the list of political crimes were running high. In this respect, the Syrian political regime is conceived as the dominant field of design about what one should or should not do. In particular, the violation of the rights of freedom and expression and opinion, which became more pronounced through global communication technologies, is strongly mentioned. Moving now to the next slide, and to aspects of street crime and crimes against property, the respondents claim that in most cases perpetrators were persecuted. However, there are cases of recognizable perpetrators subject to self-judgment by victims, as well as cases of petty thefts, which are considered as being left to the discretion of the victim. Such customary practices are evidence in pre-modern and early modernization eras and do not constitute a novelty. Corruption also runs high, but relevant practices are also met in varying socio-political circumstances around the world. By turning now to the gravest violent crime globally, that is homicide, we can say that it is treated by Syrian law in much the same way as in most countries of the West. Corruption and bribery, however, run high, minimizing the penalty effect. Neither this belief is the operation of the criminal justice administration system is new. Going now to capital punishment, consensus over it does not have nowadays faithful supporters, as the taking of a human life in the context of an institutional reaction is lacking, or it cannot accept it on principle. On the punitiveness domain, narratives reveal a rather punitive stance, since imprisonment is considered the only suitable penalty to be imposed almost to any crime. This is explicable if one considers the above high corruption and bribery rates, which distort courts' ruling, and further it is coupled with the practices witnesses in certain cases when relatives' behavior to homicide perpetrators resembles honor killings rationale. Concerning now custom has not been disarrayed by the rule of law. Also, in certain quotations, we detect a type of extra-institutional being also in place. Corruption does not affect serious offending alone, and it is interconnected to patronage politics in making people pay, let's say. Going now to the next slide concerning the law in Greece, our respondents arrive, as we know, in Greece with already structured mentality and ideals. However, they are cognizant enough of their refugee status, which impeds them from revealing an involvement in unlawful behavior, and they are anxious to reaffirm their conformity to the Greek laws. After all, they do not consider them very different from what it exists in their own country. Most importantly, what I would like to stress is the ideal of justice that is reinforced through conceptualization of equal treatment. And saying equal treatment, we can add that the ideal of justice is abstract, but it is also universal. In modern times, any rule of principle implying that members of one social group should be treated less favorably, let's say, than members of another group has been considered wrong and in conflict with the fundamental values of the system globally. The same holds true for the respondents of our case study. In certain cases also, respondents wonder how justice may not be good. Also, in other cases, they praise for justice in a host country, or they express their wish for justice to be prevail globally since they are coming from a country treated unfairly. And we have stuff of refugee burdens, the equal treatment, so that the refugee population to feel prevented from the exercise of rights. To their view, exploitative and discriminative practices are not occurring only under authoritarian regimes, but also under conditions of democracy.
Oh, you've got about a minute.
Yes, I'm going to the concluding remarks, and I would like to close by telling that universal values are not enough to destabilizing the national frame. What our cases revealed in our attempt to use the migratory experience in order to establish interconnectedness by bringing the outside in and the inside out is that while the universality and convergence of values are not to be questioned globally, specific claims are locally produced and promoted. And this, I think I'm coming to the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder to attendees, if you have questions, you can click the Q&A button down at the bottom of your window and type in your question. We'll move on now to the next presentation, online fake news and disinformation. It looks like you're muted. Oops, still muted. In the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom window, there's a mute button. There we go.
So hello to everybody. I would like to share my screen to you. I would like to thank you, all of you, for being here. Presentation, for listening to me, and I would like to say that I'm very glad for being among beloved colleagues, and first of all with Professor Myra Kranidioti. She has been a member of my supervising committee at my PhD thesis support, and of course Dr. Joanna Tsiganou and all the other colleagues of KEME, Anastasia, of Crime Study Center of Greece, Anastasia, Dionysios, Martha, etc. They're doing a great job, and I'd like to thank them all. And of course, I would like to thank the organizers also for being invited to this conference. So, my subject has to do with fake news. It's a part of a survey of my postdoc survey, which is taking place at the University of West Attica in Greece. Here you can see also my research team members, Dr. Vasilis Karagiannopoulos from University of Portsmouth, Evangelia Androulaki, Aristotelis Kobothrekas, and Nikos Koragiannis. It's teamwork, what we're going to see today. And of course, it's a very big work. I'd like to present only some outcomes today because we have only 10 minutes so as to speak about the problem. Fake news. Nowadays, we're making studies on fake news and made so big conversation about fake news because internet and the networking platform, they have made easier the proliferation of fake news.
It's looking like we may have a little bit of a technical issue here. Not able to hear you. He has and it looks like he may have dropped connection. We'll try to get him back. I'm thinking probably the best thing to do if he doesn't come back to the meeting in the next couple of seconds is for us to move on to the next presentation. And then if he comes back, we can bring him back in. We'll give him a few more seconds to reconnect. Aha!
Very sorry, I'm here again.
No problem. Hello.
I'm sorry, something terrible happened with our internet connection. You know, everybody's on the internet.
Yeah, we've all been there for sure, so we don't blame you. It's definitely an issue we've seen.
I would like to apologize for that and to say that I don't know what exactly you have heard. May I continue?
Yes, it looks like screen share. There we go. Now we've got the screen
May I
sharing.
continue?
Yes, sir. Please do.
Okay, so I don't know what exactly you have heard. We're saying about the proliferation of fake news easier through the internet nowadays, and that's why there are several legal texts that have to do with fake news, and now it is more accurate to talk about disinformation and not about fake news exactly, according to the high-level expert group report for the European Commission with it's a report of 2018. So let me pass along lots of things that I had prepared for today, so as to see some outcomes of our survey. So a combination research has been held in Greece from the 23rd of June of 2020 till the 3rd of July of 2020. There has been a sample consisted of 2017 answered questionnaires through the internet. So, age of the participants, there are, as we can see here, most of them, there are between 31 and 40 years old, young people or people that they are used to the use of the internet. And as we can realize, more older people, more elderly people, they're not quite familiar to the internet. And male and female, they're half and half, actually, as you can see here. And the educational level, most of them, they hold a bachelor or master degree. That we can say that fake news and information, disinformation is a sub, and the critical perspective and view of fake news, of disinformation, is something that has to do more with people who are quite familiar to the news feeds, they'd like to be informed because of their work or because of their studies. So, mainly informed by internet sites, 72.8%, and social networks. As we can see, the sample says that at more than 90%, they're informed by through the internet, actually. And most of the time, or often, they can recognize a news story as false, as fake, before seeking confirmation of its substance, and that's the confirmation of the characteristics of fake news. Most fake news, they have some characteristics. We have been told about them, such as the title, or or the how can I say, a sexy title or something, so as to make the click. And there are some other characteristics also, but that could be recognized quite often. Although there are fake news that could not be easily recognized. They have believed, they don't have believed lots of times news that turn out to be false, but there are 33.6% that they say that they have often believed news that turned out to be false. So we can say that fake news problem is a real problem, that it's a problem that there is today in the society. And 75.1% they have changed the decision or behavior because they believed a story that turned out to be false. So here we can see that fake news are quite is a serious problem because they can change minds, they can change views or behaviors or whatever. And but only 5.5% of the sample they have been harmed because that they have believed fake news. The sample thinks at 46.5% that there is a benefit, financial benefit behind fake news. You can see it's about half and half the sample here, and the participants believe that the Greek legislation has to change concerning the treatment of fake news, of false news. Here we can see that if there is a financial gain, a financial profit, or a financial harm, that most of the participants support that there should be a stricter criminal treatment for them, and also a stricter criminal treatment, even stricter than the financial harm or gain when a fake news influence an election result. So let's see some outcomes. Internet tends to be the king of information. 91.2% of the sample is informed on the internet. Internet is, as the field of information, could also be considered as the field of disinformation. Fake news seem to be recognized at most time. The problem seems degraded, but perhaps the participants often overestimate its possibilities. And on the other hand, the sample indicates that disinformation is a real problem, as we have already seen. 75.1, they have changed decision or behavior attitude, but only 5.5 states having been harmed. 69.1 find Greek legislation insufficient, and as we saw, 68.8 ask for stricter criminal treatment for financial gain or harm, and 71% ask for stricter criminal treatment in case of election influence. So although participants recognize fake news at most time, 44.7 they have believed news that turned out to be false, and 57.1 changed decision or behavior. That's why we say that the participants sometimes overestimate their possibilities. In any case, we may conclude the severity of the problem. fake news cannot be always spotted. Stricter criminal treatment is considered as a solution, but we have to make a critical thinking on this view. It may be a result of criminal populism. To conclude, there are counter-by-counter variations in the criminal treatment of fake news, in the application of preventive measures and the choice of the type of prevention. Emphasis should be given on social prevention long-term. We should invest in tools that detect fake news in terms of situational prevention. We have to combine measures instead of choosing an exclusive type of measure, such as penal legislation. We need to maintain open and democratic systems and protect human rights and liberties, especially of opting for penalization of disinformation. There's a need for global cooperation and the state promotion of media literacy and strengthening of professional journalism. The internet should be a place of free expression, access to information, development of personality, self-determination with all human rights restrictions. Fighting disinformation is more difficult on the internet, thus challenges have arisen. And I hope that when our survey comes to an end, we will have lots of things to suggest for the Greek ministry, as we're able to give lots of suggestions for the Greek legislation. Thank you very much. I hope that I had been in time, and
Yes.
I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, and thanks for bearing with us with the technical issues. We're going to move right ahead here to crime trends in countries under multiple crises. I would like to remind attendees that you can ask a question of our panelists by clicking the Q&A button. We're running a little bit over time, so we may not have time for a lot of questions. So the next presenter.
Yeah.
Here we are. Fantastic.
Okay, I'm here. I'm Martha Lempesi. Just a moment. Okay, full screen. I have a problem with my camera, so I have a very impressive PowerPoint. Okay, let's see our presentation. I will present on behalf of Mrs. Joanna Tsiganou. In the proposed paper, we tend to examine crime trends in the countries under multiple crises by using as an indicative example the case of the street and violent crime in Greece vis-a-vis the current international experience. Our main concern is to question whether there is a crime drop in the above specific categories of crime committed under conditions of the current multiple crises occurring worldwide, and debate the theoretical foundations of certain explanations provided. Our research is based on the existing official statistics ranging over the period of 30 years for the above particular types of criminal offenses in Greece. For reason of economy, the theoretical foundations of our research may be summarized as follows. First of all, with the economic perspective, common is the assumption that adverse economic conditions from unemployment and poverty to income inequality and a sense of relative deprivation are linked to a growth in crime, especially in property and violent offenses. Criminal motivation theories, including strain theory, propose the illicit behavior are caused, at least in part, by structurally induced frustrations and the gap between aspirations and expectations and their achievement in practice. Available data do not support a criminal opportunity theory in that decreased levels of production and consumption may reduce some crime types, such as property crime, through the generation of fewer potential crime targets. Secondly, the 2008 crisis, however, in connection to certain expressions of trust, anxiety, insecurity, and violence in society is much too often discussed within the anomy theory domain. Third, further ongoing in the debate on falling crime rates from the perspective of criminal opportunity or routine activity theory, as well as from the point of view of the security hypothesis. In fact, criminologists generally and globally agree that crime rate, especially violent crime rates, on the increase of for more than 4 decades, tend to decrease over the past few decades in Western societies. The explanatory schemes provided also include relevant theorization from the globalization, modernization perspectives, the conflict perspectives on crime, and the institutional perspective. From as far as our data and findings, from 2010 onwards, Greece witnesses a deep economic crisis coupled with severe austerity measures, which overturned a long period of economic prosperity. Currently, the country strives to cope with the COVID pandemic and the measures implemented to its confrontation, which have severe further repercussions to society and the economy. Despite the common tendency of political media to reflect on the relation between economic deprivation and a new crime wave, evidence does not support such a strong relationship. Examining the Greek case, it is revealed that the economic recession coupled with severe austerity measures may not be associated with a wide range of typically acknowledged criminal behaviors. Upon examination of official crime statistics, the relevant data from the past 30 years suggests that Greece is witnessing an obvious and uncontested crime drop in the general volume and rate of crime during the years of recent crisis. The trend seems to have been stabilized lately in the lowest levels marked. At the same time, an increase in the rate of serious offending is marked. However, the rate of serious offending seems to have lowered in pace during the years of Greece under crisis. In short, official statistics show that in Greece, even under multiple crises, most perpetrators commit minor offenses, and those who involved in serious offending are mostly committing crime against property. As far as crime against property present an ever-increasing trend in both the era of prosperity and the era of crisis. Crimes against property are increasing in almost linear mode and hurried pace until 2019. Although data from 2020 have not been officially processed and released as yet, police reports denote a reduction in the relevant crime occurrences during the 9-month period of January-September 2020 under conditions of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown measures implemented for its confrontation. Indicatively, robberies have decreased by 41%, thefts of motor vehicles have decreased by 26%, and thefts and burglaries have decreased by 25%. Since most of the crime drop literature is examining the violent crime index upon examination of its specific parameters for the Greek case, we have concluded the following. Despite assertion support of an increase in violent crime offending in times of economic crisis, the occurrence of violent crime in Greece for the last 30 years is not supporting the relevant arguments. The violent crime trend is progressing smoothly, with worth noticing fluctuations during the initial years of the economic crisis, but with a clear stabilization mode throughout the last decade. At the societal level, the magnitude of the culturally diversified migrant population flows into Greece from 90s onwards leaves its own footprint in the country's violent crime statistics. On the other hand, if we consider the homicide rate, general and intentional, we have witnessing a very clear downward trend. In fact, during the last decade, Greece has witnessed multiple crises, economic, humanitarian, and pandemic, which hit the country and society violently, abruptly, and suddenly. They have brought about a severe hit to our institutional and legal civilization, extreme structural dislocation in income distribution and the labor market. In the initial years of the economic crisis, 2010 and 2012, state institutions and mechanisms of control as well as society seem disorientated. Criminal activity too. It was one of those moments in human history that everything seemed to be at a total standstill. The same holds true about the current circumstances of the COVID pandemic. So to the question, if there is a crime drop in society under crisis, the Greek case supports that there is. The data available indicate that in Greece, under crisis, homicide almost disappear and specific violent acts are diminished. The upward trend in grave offenses analyzed in its specific characteristics indicates almost exclusively people's reaction to unjust treatment. Most law offending behavior involves crimes against the state and its official dome, its law and order mechanisms, as well as offenses against treasury. Property crimes follow the same upward trends in both times of prosperity and times of austerity. Data from the Greek case help us to pose new theoretical dilemmas requiring explanation. The only field of criminal activity that was soon recovered for the initial sudden blow of the crisis was organized crime. Drugs, guns, and smuggling proved to be almost immune to viral crisis and thriving. This is explicable in terms of both opportunity theory and security hypothesis. At this point, we should note that Greece has always been placed among the countries with the lowest crime rate globally. This has not changed during the past 30 years, with the exception of corruption. Globalization processes, however, and migration flows in and through the country have changed the quality and the gravity of crimes committed. Certain forms of organized crime have emerged, but numbers are still running low. With the risk to be blamed for epistemological relativism and ethnocentrism, we find it difficult to generalize based on measures constructed for other purposes and by other means than our national statistical records imply. For example, considering the drop in the homicide rate in Greece and the decrease in the violent property offending, we tend to agree with A.B. and Linde that various types of violence follow different trends that are not converging, but rather diverging. Such an assessment intensifies our dilemma to adopt and adapt to the Greek case of the International Violent Crime Index, let alone the epistemological pitfalls undermining such an endeavor that is associated with legal concepts and the statistical representation of their enforcement, nationally and culturally defined. We also tend to agree with Bomer and Wolf that there is a mixed support for explaining emerging trends in violent crime, but contrary to their allegations, we have not found it associated with key structural variables, such as poverty and income inequality alone, but also with key cultural variables, such changes in the societal norms of expressed masculinity and cultural values, underlying social status and the prestige. So, if we are seeking a holistic explanatory approach, we are on the wrong side of the road. Economic crises are associated with crime, but not in the way economic theories assess. Anomy theory possesses a strong explanatory value, but not for periods of prosperity. Modernization theory might be applicable to explain crime trends before the crisis in times of prosperity. Due to the intervening variable of the economic crisis, it does not seem plausible to the explanation of subsequent crime trends. Conflict theories are also problematic in explaining the uninterrupted increase of property crimes in times of wealth and in era of poverty. Most promising seems the institutional paradigm, but not in all of its arguments. We would rather resort to the theorizations of modern risk societies or societies at risk in a modernity. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. We have run out of time in this panel, so unfortunately we don't have time for Q&A. I would encourage attendees to reach out to our panelists if they have questions. Also, we'll be posting these sessions to YouTube as quickly as we can. It'll take us a little bit of time, but we will be posting those. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, search YouTube for CrimCon and you'll find us, or you can subscribe to our mailing list at crimcon.org. For folks who are hanging out for the next panel, I'm going to end this session and then restart it, so you'll have to join it again. Just to let you know, there's a bunch of boring reasons why we're doing it that way. But I'm going to end this and then start the next session. Thank you so much to our panelists today.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.